pop 2 goes the air. Ooh, it's stiff. Oh, that's a nicer aesthetic than the plastic one. I see 3 fans. Well, let's take a closer look at the Pop 2 Air. Full Chaos Core, Pop 2 Air. It's a little weird for me because the original Pop Air was actually kind of a good home server case, and for the home server use case, this case is not quite as good for that. But it is a really solid side panel. See what I did there? You know, and it's really solid considering it's inexpensive. There's no tempered glass. The RF is very, very quiet. Like our cooler from Be Quiet. This one was on sale. A Be Quiet tower cooler. This one is an older model, but yeah. So this is a 7800X 3D, and the memory is kind of expensive. It's DDR5 5600, which because it's an X3D processor with extra V-cache, the slower memory speed doesn't really hurt you. For the GPU and ASUS, 9060 XT is what I picked, and I went a little overboard with the Creator X870. You know, you can find a good deal on ASRock boards right now. There's a lot of hesitation. The hesitation is perhaps a bit overblown. IMHO. We did a different video on that, but I'm really happy with how this build turned out overall. The front panel connection, you have a single Type A and a single Type C port. Now, the eagle-eyed among you may have noticed that the Type C connector on our Type C motherboard is not connected, and that is because Fractal is doing something interesting. The Type A connector here, one of the connectors goes to the Type C port, and the other connector goes to a Type A port. So it's a Type C port, even though it doesn't have a Type C header, which has some weird implications in terms of, oh, I would like to use Type C for charging or high speed or like 2x20. Not going to happen on this case. This is think of it as a regular old Type A port, but with a built-in Type C adapter, which is not the same thing as a native Type C port. The front panel connection for like power LED is also solid. It's not individual connectors, but it uses the standard layout where you've got, you know, power LED and hard drive LED, and then power button and reset button with the one cut out in the corner. Overall, it's pretty easy to build in. Also, the 3 front intake, you know, it's got the scoop that really helps with flow-through GPU, modern flow-through GPU designs. So overall, pretty happy with this build. There's also like a hidden fan connector at the rear. This is a 120mm fan that's installed. You can see you don't have a ton of clearance here for your GPU. There should be a plastic cover on the back here, which is, you know, covering the thumb screws, but you know, I'm always using these computers like on the bench and for testing, and so stuff is coming in and out, and so I always lose the plastic connection because I'm always doing that. But if you're just buying this machine to use, it's completely fine. And also, I have to say, I really like the solid side panel. I'm really glad that Fractal sent me the solid side panel instead of the glass side panel, because whenever we're buying these at like Micro Center or just, you know, using them around the office or for giveaways or whatever, I like the solid. I like the metal versus the glass. The front aesthetic is pretty cool. It's pretty easy to pop the front off and get at the fans and be able to cool the system and whatever you need to do there. So there's not really a lot to complain about with this case. It's pretty solid for what it is. The pricing, I'm told the pricing is supposed to be around $100 US. With all of the chaos in the world, tariffs, whatever, you know, who knows. But yes, this you would not be unhappy with this build, and certainly the 7800X3D and 7600X3D, that is also another really good deal for building a gaming system, would be a good choice. And you definitely could go with a less expensive motherboard with a build like this, but picking a motherboard like this, you're thinking about Zen 5, maybe Zen 6 down the road, higher in CPU, 16 cores. This has 10 gigabit Ethernet and Wi-Fi 7. The 10 gigabit was important to me because, I mean, 2.5 gig is just not fast enough for me anymore. I want to be able to move stuff on and off the machine really quickly with the rest of the network here. And so it's like, sort of the entry level for motherboards that have 10 gigabit Ethernet, you're going to end up getting kind of a nice motherboard. And yeah, you could use a PCI Express 10 gig adapter. Realtek has got some relatively inexpensive adapters. That is an option. I got some of those on the way. But overall, I'm pretty happy with this build. One of the fun things we like to do with thermal testing, it's very, very unscientific, but in our big giant room here, is just run a bunch of workloads. Like let Firestrike run for 12 hours, whatever, and just see how it does. And this is a really modest setup. I mean, the 7800X 3D can have an absurdly high junction temperature, especially if all 8 cores are being hammered, but most of the time in gaming, that doesn't happen. That's not how games really use the processor. And the GPU can be hammered, Firestrike, but this is also only a 9060 XT. So the heat load for this case, relative to its input cooling, not really a lot. You can also add another fan on top for the intake. The dust filter, it's that nice solid metal dust filter. I really hope this is a trend that catches on. This is much better than the plastic ones. And I really like the options, especially as we enter this world where it's like, oh, the accepted wisdom now is, a 120 or a 140 mounted as an intake in the top. So you got intake, and then everything for the exhaust. But I didn't need that for this build. This is a relatively modest build, so that's a little bit of a savings. Now, in terms of cable management, there's really not a lot going on back here. There's room to mount 2.5 inch drives. It doesn't actually have a mount. It's just pegs. You just put the 2.5 inch drive on the pegs. There's some Velcro, 2 Velcro straps. We've got our fan connection here, our front panel connection, which is easy to get at should something go catastrophically wrong. Get a reasonably okay motherboard cut out for the CPU cooler. But there's really not a lot going on back here. We're using our Fractal power supply. Yeah, Fractal has power supplies now for this build. It has dual EPS 12 volts, so the dual 8-pin for the CPU, which is nice to see. And yeah, I could have been a little less lazy and tied this off, but it's fine. It's completely fine. We've got the PCIe, 6+2 power and Molex and everything else just sort of tucked away down here at the bottom. You can mount 3.5 inch drives down here for mechanical storage or anything like that. It ships with a protector installed. A little bit of plastic here, because vibration and stuff, this will rub and it will rub the paint off. And there's a fun little fractal fabric thing there. But I left the plastic because it doesn't hurt anything, and it does help with wear. Insert and remove the side panel, that sort of thing. So over the long haul on the torture test, the case did really well for thermals, which was nice to see, given that it's a very basic case. It's a very basic case, but sort of with modern design philosophy, I guess you'd say, for things like those flow-through GPUs. So works pretty well. I mean, the power supply draws air in from the bottom and out the back. And there is a dust filter for the power supply, so a lot of the times the inexpensive cases will forego the dust filter on the power supply. I'm glad to see the Fractal did not do that, because I really get the feeling that they tried to shave every penny. Also, look, Phillips screws for the front panel, so you could remove that, but there's not a modular cutout here, so you're not going to get some sort of fancy front panel upgrade with more ports at some point later, because it's a solid top piece that's riveted in. You could replace the PCB, but it's not going to change the port configuration. Good job, Fractal. This is the Pop 2 Air. I wish that it had 5.25 inch bays or some kind of like server use case. The way that the front panel connection is makes it also a little problematic if you're going to put in like a server motherboard, or you're going to get something from eBay, because server motherboards often don't have that standard I/O layout. So if you see some of the older inexpensive cases from Fractal on fire sale that have the 5.25 inch bays, and you're thinking home lab use case, now might be the time to snap those up. And well, this has been a quick look at the Pop 2 Air. I'm signing out. You can find me in the Level 1 forums. If you build with one of these, post a picture, show it off. Alright, I'm signing out, and I'll see you there.